Chapter 4, Context of the Organization. Subchapter 4.1, Scope of the System. Before going forward, a brief note. We said in the first lessons that the 45001 standard is a document structured in 10 chapters called clauses. Until now, the course has been divided into chapters that do not follow the clauses of the standard. But from this lesson onward, we will proceed following topics as they are presented in the standard. Lesson 4 is about the context of Clause 5. Lesson 5 is about the context of Lesson 5, and so on. Why did we choose to follow this criterion? Because following almost step by step the clauses of the standard is usually the best way to approach it, since it helps in becoming familiar with its structure and its way of managing problems. Okay, now that everything is clear and set, we can go on to our lesson. Well, actually, we have to take a very brief look at our path before proceeding. At the end of Chapter 3, we anticipated that we were about to enter a plateau, made of Chapter 4, 5, and 6. This plateau is quite big, isn't it? It deserves a proper name. From now on, we will call it the Risk Management Plateau. This plateau is quite important because it will give us all the tools we need to map our risks and take the needed steps to face them. Now that we set our path, let's proceed. In Clause 4.3, called the Scope of the System, the standard says that the organization shall determine the boundaries and applicability of the OHS Management System to establish its scope. What does it mean? It means that the first step of building a management system is finding its scope. It makes sense, doesn't it? In the first lessons, we said that our management system will be like an engine made of many different gears. We have to state somewhere what we want to do with this gear. Technically, before even starting to build your management system, you will need to have a clear idea of what will be the use of it. So let's proceed and see what the standard asks us regarding this matter. When determining this scope, the organization shall consider the external and internal issues, the legal requirements, the functions performed at the workplaces. These requirements are quite simple, but since some of the terms are not in our vocabulary yet, they could be confusing for you. So let's switch this definition. With this one. The scope shall include all the activities, products, or services within the organization's control or influence that can impact the organization's occupational health and safety. This is the definition that we will use from now on. What does it mean? It means that your management system has to cover all your activities. If your company has a line that makes cheese and a line that makes salami, your system needs to cover both of them. Remember, the 45001 standard really pushes the idea of global management of OHS. One final note, the scope has to be available as documented information. This means that it has to be put in written form, in some sort of document of the OHS system. So, the standard wants you to make a statement about the intended use of your system, and it wants you to make it in a written form. We could say that the authors of the 45001 standard wanted companies to be very clear about what they intend to handle with the system and what they don't want to handle with the system. Before proceeding, we want you to pay attention to this icon. From now on, every time something has to be put in a document, we will use this little icon that looks like a folder. Okay then, now that we learned what the standard wants us to do regarding the scope of the system, we can learn how to write one. Let's make a slightly more detailed example that will teach you how to write your system scope. For this reason, you could notice that for the first time, we switched to the build mode. The right top of our slide has a pencil and wrench symbol. According to the standard, your scope has to be short, simple, clear, representative. Why? Because you don't want to mislead anyone. The scope could be read by your clients, your contractor, your local government, so you want them to have a very clear idea just by reading those 2 to 3 lines. If your company is a cheese factory, how should your scope be? It should be manufacturing and packaging of dairy products. There is no need for anything more fancy, long, complicated. If your company has different locations that we could call City A, City B, City C, it could be useful to be a little more specific and therefore writing something like manufacturing and packaging of dairy products in the A, B, and C facilities. Just to be safe, let's add something that makes it 100% clear that all the activities are covered. A phrase like, "This OHS system applies to all the company's activities," will do. As to where you have to put it, the standard does not specify. You could put it in your context of the organization document, or you could put it in the manual if your company has a manual. We will see in the next lessons what these documents are. What really matters is that you put it in a document of your OHS management system.